Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Coming up, we're going to play some new audio from Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg, who says he's a big free speech guy now, and he wants to tell you all about the dirty deeds of the Biden administration behind the scenes. I'll share that with you. Kind of amazing. Again, the number 888-630-9625. President Trump wants to make America great again. He wants to make America healthy again. And I suspect he wants to make it beautiful again as well. Back in 2023 at CPAC, he actually issued a challenge to all of the 50 states to make the country more beautiful again. This is what it sounded like.
And I'll challenge the governors of all 50 states, to join me in a great beautification campaign. We will rename our schools and boulevards, not after communists, but after great American patriots. We will get rid of bad and ugly buildings and return to the magnificent classical style of Western civilization.
Yeah, the classical style of Western civilization. Think Union Station and not the J. Edgar Hoover building, widely considered the single ugliest building in Washington, D.C. Although I think there is some competition for that. My next guest knows all about it. Justin Shoebow is here. He's the president of the National Civic Art Society and a former chairman of the U.S. Commission of Fine Arts. Justin, good to have you with us, sir.
Hi, Vince. Thanks for having me.
You know, I love when President Trump talks about this, and he talks about it every so often, and I think, yes, please focus on that. Do you think it's possible?
Oh, absolutely. You know, at the end of his first term, President Trump issued a revolutionary executive order that reoriented our federal buildings from ugly, modernist, dispiriting designs to beautiful classical and traditional architecture. You know, you mentioned the FBI building. Since essentially, you know, World War II, the government's been building, you know, banal and ugly buildings, and in recent years, even some like avant-garde designs that look like art projects.
Yeah.
But President Trump recognized this huge problem and issued this very important executive order. Now, unfortunately, Biden rescinded it almost immediately after taking office. I mean, immediately. But I'd be shocked if President Trump does not reissue the executive order.
Yes. So, I mean, look, I don't think the FBI deserve a new building right now because, you know, they should be punished for other reasons. But it is a very ugly building. So maybe put it at the end of the list. But what was the point of this type of architecture? I hear it described often as brutalist architecture. What is the point of architecture that looks like that?
Well, brutalism is rooted in this idea that buildings need to show the honest, harsh truth of reality. You know, we're going to use exposed raw materials, exposed concrete, and things that are unpleasant to touch, unpleasant to look at. And it originated in, you know, in some ways in Nazi fortifications in World War II, and then got built by the socialist government in Britain and later by the Great Society in the United States. These are not buildings that were ever intended to be beautiful. It's not like we're debating about, oh, some people like it, some people find it beautiful, and some people don't. Rather, they were trying to achieve something completely different. And, you know, really, to my mind, brutalist buildings are the equivalent of a boot stamping on your face for all eternity. They give a sense of the federal government as a faceless bureaucracy.
Yes, that's right. George Orwell's description of fascism. Yeah, it's gross. It's really gross, and it's dispiriting to see. And as you describe it, perhaps that's the point. I always think of it as like the kind of place that doesn't consider a human that important. It's just like another cog in the wheel. Like the building is built to maximize the number of humans it can pack into it, not to uplift them as they travel through the nation's capital.
Yeah, I mean, someone once said that the notorious Boston City Hall looks like an upside-down human sacrifice pyramid from the Aztecs. These are not buildings that uplift people, that make them proud in their country, inspire them to be better citizens. They have a demoralizing effect. And President Trump, who is a builder, understood that there is a better alternative out there. I mean, the executive order he issued pointed out that the founding fathers, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, consciously chose classical architecture for the core buildings in the new nation's government. They wished to harken back to ancient Rome and Athens, these democratic precedents, and they saw that this architecture was time-honored and timeless.
Because if I understand the reasoning here, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the beauty itself should be extended to the people, that it's the people's government, and that they're entitled to enjoy the spoils of this system. Whereas typically in, sort of authoritarian systems, that luxuries like that were reserved to the ruler.
Yeah, I mean, Jefferson had a great line about the design of the U.S. Capitol. He said it's the first temple to democracy built using Athenian taste for people looking far beyond Athenian destinies. They saw that these buildings were gifts to the American people, and, great architects ought to serve the public as opposed to build buildings that are widely disliked.
Is it too expensive to make buildings beautiful? Is it cost prohibitive to make buildings look like Union Station?
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, you can compare federal buildings, courthouses, and federal buildings authorized in the same year. Some of them modernist, some of them classical. And if you just look at the cost per square foot, they are equivalent. It's a misnomer to think that we can't build like that today. A case in point is the Tuscaloosa Federal Building, which is this gorgeous Greek Revival design in Tuscaloosa, and it was built on time and under budget.
So it can be done, and there are people who are standing by ready to do that for us.
Oh, for sure. There are plenty of talented classical architects in this country who ought to be getting some of these important commissions.
Yeah. So Justin, tell us about the work you're doing these days, and do you think that you might be able to play a role here in an incoming Trump administration to right this ship?
Well, I wouldn't want to be presumptuous about serving in the administration, but I do think there is great opportunity at the National Endowment for the Arts, which is the largest funder of the arts and arts education in the country. One of the things I would love to see at the NEA is an initiative that celebrates the grand tradition of American civic architecture, going all the way back to the founders, and including buildings like Union Station that you mentioned, or the original Penn Station in New York. I mean, architecture is a very interesting art because it cuts across the divide between high culture and common culture. After all, architects are highly educated, sophisticated designers, but their audience for public buildings is ordinary Americans. And, looking at great buildings in Washington, great classical buildings, these are widely appreciated. They are iconic symbols of this country. And I would love to see the National Endowment for the Arts, encourage our great tradition in civic architecture.
Yeah, if you have respect for something, you work to make it look nice. You work to make it beautiful. And President Trump's attitude, you can tell it flows through everything, especially what he's been saying lately. Just his big picture view of America. He views it as a great country that he thinks could be even greater and in fact bigger. He's talking about Greenland and Canada and the Panama Canal. This is all in line with also having a big vision for what does the country look like on the inside.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite presidents who cared greatly about art and architecture was Theodore Roosevelt. And he said that national greatness that is wholly divorced from artistic production is a one-sided, malformed greatness. President Trump understands the importance of architecture for the body politic. He also appears to be very interested in public sculpture as well. He has announced that he's going to build this garden of American heroes full of statues of great figures from American history. and I'm hoping that it's going to be done at the highest artistic level.
Yeah. And his taste for classic architecture is, you can feel it in Washington, D.C. too, because I'm seeing these reports right now that the Wall Street Journal reports that the Trumps are right now in talks to reclaim the old post office building in Washington, D.C. as the Trump Hotel again. It's been the Waldorf Astoria for a bit since the Trump administration ended the last time. But it looks like the Trump family, they've confirmed, they're in talks right now to see if they can acquire this thing again. That's another beautiful building. It's exactly in line with the kind of architecture we're talking about, right?
Yeah, the post office building is a beautiful Romanesque design. It actually used to house some government offices, in fact, including the National Endowment for the Arts, which has been moved to utterly forgettable modernist building. But it's no accident that President Trump wants a hotel in such a gorgeous building.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. By the way, what is the National Endowment of the Arts focused on under Biden? Are they as passionate about classical architecture as you are?
No. I mean, they have paid no attention to classical architecture. And in fact, a lot of the grants that they have funded have been for all sorts of DEI stuff, as one could imagine. For a long time, admittedly, the Republicans have called for eliminating the National Endowment for the Arts. But I think that's first and foremost because they don't think it's producing great art. If, by contrast, we could, see great symphonies being composed, great architecture coming about, then I do think that there would be widespread support for the agency.
Yeah.
And President Trump is fundamentally optimistic when it comes to culture, including architecture. So let's be optimistic about the NEA as well.
Yeah, that's good. If an agency is devoted to a war on the American spirit, it shouldn't exist. But if it can be righted to actually enhance the country, I'm all for it. Justin Shoebow, thank you very much for joining us. Great to talk to you. What a great topic. And I really appreciate you today, sir.
Well, it's great being here.
All right, let's see. Mike is calling in from Sunshine, line 4. Hello, Mike. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Vince, thanks for taking my call. Your last discussion talked about brutalism, the art, and there's a new movie out called The Brutalist. It won the Golden Globe. I'm not a big fan of what the film industry is putting out these days, but my daughter has been studying architecture, so she explained it to me. And I guess we're going to go see the movie. It's only showing in a couple of movie theaters here in the D.C. area right now. Mm-hmm. Maybe expecting a wider release later. But, I was more intrigued about the Holocaust survival, story and coming to America. Mm-hmm. So it might be very interesting.
I don't know much about the movie, but I understand that's one of the themes in the film. I just wonder, based on the title, do they celebrate brutalism, or do they think it's as toxic as it actually is?
Well,
I guess we'll find out.
My understanding of the plot is that this Hungarian architect, Adrian Brody, survives the Holocaust, comes to the United States, mm-hmm. and was working in a coal mine or something for a period of time, and he's discovered by kind of a robber baron played by Guy Pearce. And I'm not really sure, he thinks he's a talented architect. So, yes, I believe that this robber baron wants something built that is brutalist in nature. So I think they do maybe applaud that type of archusarchitecture.
Interesting.
It's very simple, very stark, very industrial looking.
Yes. And very empty, soul-sucking. It is. And, I used to think it was silly to even be concerned about the art of a building. When you're younger, you just like, well, what's the utility of it? That makes sense. And you don't really think about it that much. But I don't know, the older I get, the more I appreciate the value of a good-looking building and a good-looking community. And it actually does impact the human spirit. I think it matters a great deal. And I'm really sorry to see what some of the leadership of this country has done to it.
Yeah, I agree. I hope I'm not going to get a lecture on capitalism, but we'll see. I'm doing this for my daughter.
Okay, cool. Well, if it's fun, report back, Mike. I'd love to hear about it. Thank you, Mike.
Take care.
Yeah, it's Mike and Sunshine going to go see a movie about brutalism, The Brutalist. Let's see here. Donna has been waiting very patiently in Frederick, so let's bring her in here. Donna is on line 2. Donna, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, I want to thank you for taking my call. What an interesting show you've had today. I've been fascinated with things people have to say, and even the listeners. They've had great contributions. And one of the things that I'm thinking about with respect to President Trump and this sentencing, first of all, I know a certain someone who, if this individual created hoodies and T-shirts with the words "Fave Felon 47," I believe, the No Woke Zone Club would get very popular in this area. And then secondly, I just want to say all of these supposed crimes have been done knowingly, emphasis on that word. And I think we're going to hear that a lot going forward, as turnabout is fair play.
Yeah, turnabout is definitely fair play, especially when it's against unfair play. You're right about that, Donna. And all of these hit jobs scheduled for an election year designed to take down a political opponent, and somehow they only made him stronger. Isn't that amazing? What an amazing series of events. President Trump, even today, as he appeared via video in New York, in Manhattan, in that courtroom for one last time, looking very relaxed as he pointed out what a scam all of this was. Stay with us. Mark Zuckerberg now speaking out about the Biden administration and the awful things they do behind the scenes. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 5:35 here on News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Facebook, owned by Meta, Mark Zuckerberg's operation, earlier this week shocked the world when they announced they were going to be getting rid of their massive legacy media censorship operation, which is now undergoing a long overdue death, thankfully. And instead switching their moderation model, if you're going to call it that, to a community notes system where they democratize fact-checking. That is, people like you and me can contribute what we think is useful context when we see something that's untrue on Facebook, and then everybody else can kind of vote on that. If this system comes into place the way that X has its system, which I think is wonderful. It's been great. It adds context. It doesn't lead to censorship. It's like a robust, open conversation, which makes people better informed, which is, of course, what you want. And now, adding to the list of things Facebook is doing, all of a sudden, in the wake of that 2024 election, is this. Axios headline today, exclusive, Meta kills DEI programs. Their DEI programs are going away. What does that mean? Well, it turns out it's pretty far-reaching. Mark Zuckerberg's Meta is terminating major DEI programs effective immediately, including for hiring, training, and picking suppliers, according to a new employee memo that was obtained by Axios. The move is a strong signal to Meta employees that the company's push to make inroads with the incoming Trump administration isn't just posturing, but an ethos shift that will impact its business practices. Meta says it was changing course because the, quote, legal and policy landscape surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in the United States is changing, end quote, per a memo by Janelle Gale, the Vice President of Human Resources. The moves come just 3 days after Meta ended many of its efforts to fact-check and police speech on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Let me add the context that's missing here. I'll do a quick community note for you on the Axios piece. They are allowing conversation to flourish on the platform if Mark Zuckerberg is true to his word. They're not, and it's true, they are ending efforts to, quote, police speech, but they're allowing the community to weigh in when they disagree. That's a much better system. It honors the spirit of the First Amendment. That's, if they hold to their word. The announcement also follows a host of public moves by tech companies and executives to align with the politics and cultural views of President-elect Trump and the MAGA movement. But the cultural view of the MAGA movement is that we should be allowed to debate stuff. So that's not a right-wing idea, or at least it's not supposed to be. Friday's memo by Gail, the HR lady, announcing changes to, quote, our hiring, development, and procurement practices was posted for all of the Meta employees on their company's internal message board. The legal and policy landscape, they're just repeating themselves here. The Supreme Court of the United States has recently made decisions signaling a shift in how courts will approach DEI. The term DEI has also become charged, in part because it is understood by some as a practice that suggests preferential treatment of some groups over others. Well, it doesn't actually suggest that. It is what that is. And they're not even groups. It's just judging people on the basis of immutable characteristics, typically race or gender. And that, my friends, is prejudice. That's what prejudice is. When you prejudge someone on the basis of an immutable characteristic, it's literally the definition of prejudice. So don't do that anymore. How hard is that? Similar moves, they say, have been made by other companies recently, including Walmart in November and McDonald's just this week. Meta has pledged $1 million donation to Trump's inauguration. That's good. They added UFC president and CEO Dana White to their board this week as well. Meta's memo announced 5 big areas in so-called DEI that they're pulling back from. 1, they're firing the DEI team. They're no longer going to have a team focused on DEI. Maxine Williams, the company's chief diversity officer, is actually going to be taking a completely different role at Meta, they claim, focused on accessibility and engagement. They're also ending equity and inclusion programs. They're instead going to build programs that, quote, focus on how to apply fair and consistent practices that mitigate bias for everybody, no matter your background. Okay. I like where that's going. Sunsetting supplier diversity efforts. Meta is going to end its efforts to source business suppliers from, quote, diverse-owned businesses. Let me unpackage the euphemism involved here. They're not going to target businesses based on the skin color of its ownership anymore, it is a cancer that's infected a lot of corporations, where they make decisions based on the skin color of the business owner. What? That shouldn't be the reason you do business with someone. It should be about the quality of their product. Can they deliver on time? Will they enhance the value of your product? You know, the basic things. Meta will end its efforts to give prejudicial treatment to various businesses based on skin color. Moving forward, the company will, quote, focus our efforts on supporting small and medium-sized businesses that power much of our economy, they wrote. And then they will also end the diverse slate approach to hiring. Meta will continue to source candidates from different backgrounds, they say, but it will no longer use the diverse slate hiring approach, which ensures a diverse pool of candidates is considered for every open position. Quote, we believe there are other ways to build an industry-leading workforce and leverage teams made up of world-class people from all types of backgrounds, they wrote. This is, again, a lot of language to describe that they were avoiding hiring people on the basis of skin color. They were lowering your chances of being hired depending on your skin color, or elevating your chances, on the other hand, based on your skin color. If this is an actual merit-based system, they will ignore that detail, which they should. That's not the way you should conduct your business with racial prejudice. And then they say they're also going to end representation goals at the company. Quote, this is Axios. Having representation goals can create the impression that decisions are being made based on race or gender, Gail wrote. While this has never been our practice, we want to eliminate any impression of it, she said. She noted that the company, quote, previously ended representation goals for women and ethnic minorities. So, once again, no race or gender quotas in hiring. Okay, good. Also, I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of federal laws that are tripped by using race and gender prejudice in your hiring practices. So you're probably helping yourselves legally, too, by getting out of that mess. So that's where Meta is today. And remember, Facebook, one of the biggest social media platforms on the planet, the town commons for so many people. So, and that's the way that a lot of people get their information. And the company at least is making very public statements that, we're going to get rid of all the racism and sexism that has dominated our company. We'll see. Mark Zuckerberg went on Joe Rogan's podcast again today, or at least it aired today. And he was talking about all of the Biden administration pressure that his company's been under to censor what you can see. It's not the first time Zuckerberg's talked about all this, but here he's talking about it, and it's probably the most negative judgment he's cast towards the Biden administration in public.
When they were trying to roll out the vaccine program. And now I'm generally pretty pro rolling out vaccines. I think on balance, the vaccines are more positive than negative. But I think that while they're trying to push that program, they also tried to censor anyone who is basically arguing against it. And they pushed us super hard to take down things that were true, right? I mean, they basically pushed us and said, anything that says that vaccines might have side effects, you basically need to take down. And I was just like, well, we're not going to do that. We're clearly not going to do that. I mean, that is kind of inarguably true.
Who is they? Who's telling you to take down things that
it was
that talk about vaccine side effects?
It was people in the Biden administration. I think it was I wasn't involved in those conversations directly, but I think it was.
How difficult is that to not be involved in those conversations directly?
People are telling us we had to remove this stuff, that COVID vaccines have side effects. We're not allowed to say that. And, and throughout this, Mark kind of gives this impression that, I stood tall against that. I refused to remove that stuff despite all the pressure that they were giving us. That's not true. There were a lot of things. I mean, it formed the basis of entire lawsuits. Ask Robert F. Kennedy Jr. about this. There's plenty of evidence of Facebook stepping in, doing the government's bidding, and censoring Americans as they tried to have adult conversations about what comes next, what's happening, and especially their health. Remember, at one point, there was a Tucker Carlson video from a monologue that he did on the Fox News channel where he was talking about, it was maybe masks or something and their lack of effectiveness. I forget the topic. It was COVID related. And the Biden White House scolded Facebook browbeat them into censoring the video to, quote, limit its reach. In other words, censor it. Censor it to prevent people from seeing it at wide scale. That was the White House demanding it and Facebook going along with it. So no, it wasn't just like, we stood tall in the face of all this pressure. That's not the case at all. There was a lot of folding to that pressure. Zuckerberg describes that people in the Biden administration would call Facebook employees and scream at them and curse at them. This is how much swagger the Biden White House thought they had over Facebook. They thought that we just call these guys and they'll do our bidding. They work for us.
It's all in the public domain. I mean, basically, these people from the Biden administration would call up our team and scream at them and curse, and it's like these documents it's all kind of out there.
Did you record any of those phone calls?
I don't think we but I think
I want to listen.
I mean, there are emails. the emails are published. It's all kind of out there, and they're like, and basically it just got to this point where we were like, no, we're not gonna take down things that are true. That's ridiculous. They wanted us to take down this meme of Leonardo DiCaprio looking at a TV talking about how 10 years from now or something, you're going to see an ad that says, okay, if you took a COVID vaccine, you're eligible for, for this kind of payment, this sort of class action lawsuit type meme. And they're like, no, you have to take that down. And we just said, no, we're not going to take down humor and satire. We're not going to take down things that are true. And then at some point, I guess, I don't know, it flipped a bit. I mean, Biden, when he gave some statement at some point, I don't know if it was a press conference or to some journalists, where he basically was like, these guys are killing people. And I don't know, then all these different agencies and branches of government basically just started investigating, coming after our company. It was brutal. It was brutal.
Wow.
case you're wondering, is the White House involved in a censorship campaign on the American people? That has been the critical discussion. And the answer to that is abundantly clear. Zuckerberg said that any little resistance Facebook mounted led to an all-of-government assault on his company. That's insane. It's totally tyrannical. And it was all based on the content of speech, a total threat to the First Amendment. Mark Zuckerberg was also asked today by Joe about this theory, or at least Mark brought it up himself potentially, about, why now? Why all of a sudden? So now you're speaking out about all of this, about the Biden administration's abuses of your company. You fired the legacy media outlets, the establishment media outlets who were censoring your entire platform. You'd shop that out to them, paid them a lot of money in the process. You're also folding your DEI programs, getting rid of all of the racial and gender prejudice you have going on inside of your company. Why now? Why just after the 2024 election is this all taking place? Why didn't it happen at some earlier date? Mark talks about that. I'll play that audio for you in just a moment. I'm fascinated by this answer. It's 5:50 now. All right, Mark Zuckerberg speaking out now about all of the changes going on at his company, hoping to keep that thing alive. It's a big social media company, although I'm using X way more these days than Facebook. Here is Mark Zuckerberg saying, hey, all of these changes you're witnessing me do right now, it's not just because of the 2024 election, although it does play a role.
I mean, at this point, I think a lot of people look at this as like a purely political thing. It's because they kind of look at the timing and they're like, hey, well, you're doing this right after the election. It's like, okay, I try not to like change our content rules like right in the middle of an election either, right? It's like there's not like a great time to do this. It's
right. And you want to do it a year later.
Yeah, it's like there's no good time to do it. There's, right. At whatever time is going on, there's going to be, so. The good thing about doing it after the election is you get to take this kind of cultural pulse as like, okay, where are people right now and how are people thinking about it? We try to have policies that reflect, mainstream discourse. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is something I've been thinking about for a while. I think that this is going to be pretty durable because at this point we've just been pressure tested on this stuff for like the last 8 to 10 years with like these huge institutions just pressuring us and I feel like this is kind of the right place to be going forward.
Well, if he sticks with it, yeah, it is the right place to be. Although it's funny that he says that he's kind of taken the cultural temperature and then they shift their policies based on that. Probably not a good idea to be that mercurial, at least for the public. I get just the pure, cold political calculation he's making. When the Democrats are in charge, unless we tyrannically censor everybody, our company could be destroyed. So we've got to do that. And then when Republicans are back in charge, or Trump in particular, when he's back in charge, the world is much more open for debate. You'd hate to think that a Democrat winning in the future is going to lead these big social media platforms to once again crush speech. For now, while we take the cultural temperature. No. How about use all that MMA training you've been doing lately? Start standing up, getting in some fights here with the left. Join the battle, Mark. Prove it. Go the full Elon. Prove it that you're in. We'll see. I think most people have already ruled him out, and rightfully so. But even Donald Trump, he always believes in a good redemption story. Always holds that hope. All right. Have a great weekend. The great one, Mark Levin, up next here on WMAL.